Good evening, folks. This is Deb Delapiana, and this is your short take. This won't take long because I work today. I did not get a chance to watch the J6 committee hearing in its entirety, but I will. As soon as I'm done here, that's the first thing I'm going to do while I fill out, cards to get the vote out. But I did pay attention to some of the things that did go on. So let's talk a little bit. We're going to talk in generalities here. And then once I've watched this, we'll get together again and talk a little bit more specifically. But there are a few items I'd like to touch on. Number one, the assertion that the Secret Service was taken by surprise by the violence of January 6, 2021, can now go into the record books as a pile of bullshit. There was audio released today that proved that the Secret Service was talking to each other by radio, pointing out and giving direction to each other about where these fine Donald Trump supporters were sitting in trees with automatic weapons and dressed in camouflage. Okay, there were several references made to them on the trip to the Capitol, where they were located, what they looked like, and what they had for weapons. The notion, by the way, and the assertion by Jim Jordan that it was an unarmed attack is a fucking lie. Again, another fucking lying sack of shit on the Republican side of the coin. Okay, if their mouths are moving, they're fucking lying, pretty much. Okay, that's number one. Number two, another thing I know today. Donald Trump, in his inevitable own fashion, trying to obstruct justice in almost every case he's being investigated in, made the grand and glorious attempt to appeal to the Supreme Court to intervene in his documents case, which is an entirely separate case from January 6th. Now, the Supreme Court already has a credibility issue after Roe v. Wade. And after the fact that, we know 3 of those who got approved to the Supreme Court for the specific intention of overturning Roe v. Wade, we now know that, lied under oath about the fact that they weren't there to overturn Roe v. Wade. Okay? So their credibility's in the toilet. Had they taken the documents case, their credibility would have been even further in the toilet, if that's possible. Maybe right down in the toilet where Donald Trump stuffed his classified documents and flushed them away. But today, the Supreme Court rejected Donald Trump's plea to intervene in the case. So don't think for a nanosecond that some of that wasn't self-serving. Nobody wanted to deal with Clarence Thomas's bullshit. Clarence Thomas, who actually should recuse himself from just about everything having to do with January 6th and the documents case. But he won't, because he's Clarence Thomas. So, bad day number one for Donnie Boy was that the Supreme Court said no. Another bad day for Donnie Boy was today when the J6 committee at the end voted unanimously to serve him a subpoena to testify under oath to the J6 committee. Now, he's out there on Truth Social pissing and moaning about, why didn't they ask me from the beginning? Well, Donald, when you're conducting an investigation and you're at the center of it, that ain't the way it works. The way it works is they talk about everything else with everyone else. They subpoenaed a lot of people. A lot of people fought those subpoenas. A lot of people lost. They had to testify. A lot of people willingly came forward and did their duty. That's how investigations are done. Okay. Now that we have all of this information here, and we know, you've been tied to this whole thing from the get-go. Now they want to hear from you, Donald. They want to hear from you as you defend yourself. So please, don't put this back on the committee by asking them why they didn't do this sooner, as if they were just going to invite you in the first day. You were going to testify and they were going to take your word for it because, hey, you were the president, and they weren't going to look any further. Shut the fuck up, really. a man who really has no understanding of what the law is, trying to school a congressional investigation committee? Give me a break. Do you think Donald Trump's going to answer that subpoena? I think Donald Trump's going to fight that subpoena as hard as he can. And I think when he does show up, if he does show up, he's going to plead the fifth, because that's what innocent people do, isn't it? Well, we know that everyone has a constitutional right to plead the fifth, but you know what? Just because you plead the fifth doesn't mean they don't have a right to charge you if they think they have enough evidence. So you can plead whatever the fuck you want. And then finally, in closing, a little word about Madison Cawthorn, only because I want you to understand fully what the Republican Party is all about. Now, Madison Cawthorn lost his primary a few months ago, I might add. Since then, Madison Cawthorn has not bothered to show up from work. He has missed 86 votes. His staff doesn't even go to the office anymore, and he does not participate in anything. So basically, he's riding the coattails and the taxes of the American people right into the sunset. You know what? I'm just going to ask the Republican voters, how much are you willing to take from the Republican Party? I'm talking to the rational people now. The MAGA people, they're fucking lost in the ozone. There's no point in even trying to talk to them. They don't get any venues on my websites. I don't talk to them. I don't discuss them. I simply delete them because they're not worth spending time on. I can't get those minutes of my life back. And I'm far too old to continue on discussing things with them. But for rational Republicans, just understand this. Just because you are registered as a Republican, it doesn't mean you can't change that and do the right thing. You can always go back to that later when you have an actual party that's functioning and not as a fascist entity, by the way. Because we're headed right to where Italy is, right to where Turkey is, right? Because all of those peoples are all friends of the right wing. You know, the new Giorgia Meloni, Prime Minister of Italy, is friends with Steve Bannon. Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil was endorsed by Donald Trump. Donald Trump can't get his fucking ass open wide enough for Vladimir Putin. And he just honestly loves Viktor Orban. In fact, Viktor Orban was the keynote speaker at the Conservative Political Action Conference this year. So how much are you willing to just close your eyes and pretend none of this is happening? Because it is happening in real time. Folks, it's wake up time. You know, once I get through this J6 hearing and I get all the details, we're going to come back and talk in much more detail. But what I want to tell my friends on TikTok is this. These videos not only exist on TikTok, but they are also on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. I will tell you how to get to that channel, because when I do post on YouTube, I put all kinds of references in there for where I found my information. And just in case you haven't seen the J6 committee meeting today, I will have a link to that in there as well. That will be up sometime tonight. But in the meantime, folks, we will talk in much more detail later on. You have a lovely evening.